Have you ever had that moment? That split second, where something you've believed your entire life suddenly doesn't feel right anymore? Like a familiar puzzle piece that suddenly doesn't fit where it always seemed to belong? That's exactly what happened to me the night I realized something about Tony Stark that changes everything we thought we knew about the Marvel Universe. What if I told you Tony Stark wasn't just the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist we admired, but that he was, and always has been, Dr. Doom, not in some alternate dimension, not in some what-if scenario, but in a way that's been hiding in plain sight, right before our eyes. Because the truth isn't that Tony became Doom, it's that Doom was always Tony. Sounds insane, right? But stay with me, because once you see the pattern, once you trace the trail of breadcrumbs hidden across decades of comics, movies and meta-storytelling, you'll never look at Iron Man or Doom the same way again. Ask yourself, why did Marvel, both in comics and film, build Tony and Doom as perfect reflections of one another? Same genius, same arrogance, same drive to save the world their own way, and then blur their lines so much that they became indistinguishable? Why did Dr. Doom take up the Iron Man mantle after Tony's death in the comics? And why did the MCU plant seeds of a man obsessed with control, guilt, and perfection, traits that match Doom far more than they ever matched the selfless hero we thought we knew? And what if the story we've been watching all along was never Iron Man's rise and fall, but Dr. Doom's origin story disguised as a redemption arc? Let's start where every lie begins, with the truth it tries hardest to hide. Tony Stark wasn't born a hero. He was born a mistake that technology tried to correct. A child of war industries raised in a mansion built on weapons and deceit, by a man who believed the future could be engineered like a circuit board. Howard Stark, the name that built an empire. The same empire that taught Tony that the only way to matter was to control the chaos. But what happens to a boy who learns control before compassion? Who learns design before empathy? You get a man who mistakes dominance for destiny. From his first movie, Tony wasn't saving the world. He was trying to own it. Every suit he built wasn't armor. It was an apology he refused to say out loud. Every battle wasn't about peace, it was about guilt. He was never fighting villains. He was fighting the consequences of his own hubris. And that's exactly where the first crack in the Iron Man illusion appears. Because that's also Victor Von Doom's entire story. Doom was a genius born into pain, haunted by loss, obsessed with control. He believed the only way to prevent suffering was to dominate reality itself. And isn't that the same idea Tony had when he built Ultron? A suit of armor around the world. That's not heroism, that's dictatorship, dressed in gold and red. The difference between Iron Man and Doom has never been morality. It's been marketing. Look closely. Doom hides behind a mask to conceal his scars. Tony hides behind one to project perfection. Doom rules a nation to enforce order. Tony builds AI empires to enforce peace. Doom bends magic to his will. Tony bends technology. Doom sees himself as savior, misunderstood by the ignorant. Tony does too. Two sides of the same equation. One metal mask facing another. Now here's where it gets disturbing. In the comics, after Tony dies in Civil War II, Victor Von Doom becomes the infamous Iron Man. He takes on the Iron Man mantle, wearing a suit that looks eerily like Tony's, sleek, metallic, red and gold. He claims he's doing it to redeem himself, to prove he can be more than Doom, but, read between the lines, that story wasn't about Doom trying to become Tony. It was Marvel telling us Tony was always Doom, and Doom was Tony, the same man, the same soul across mirrored timelines. And then years later, in Secret Wars 2015, Doom becomes a god. He reshapes the multiverse. He literally becomes God Emperor Doom. He wears white armor, pure, cleansed of sin, and he calls it his perfect world. Now think about Tony's final act in Endgame. He snaps his fingers, sacrificing himself, saying, "I am Iron Man," and creates him in that one act in a perfect world free of Thanos. He reshapes reality with a single gesture. That's not heroism, that's divinity. And that's the Doom template down to the final breath. It's almost poetic. Tony Stark died like Doom ascended. But here's the wild part. What if Tony didn't die? What if Tony, like Doom, transcended? Because the very concept of the multiverse gives Marvel permission to overlap souls, merge timelines, and recycle consciousness. What if Tony Stark's mind, fragmented by the power of the stones, scattered across universes. One fragment reborn as Victor Von Doom. A cosmic echo wearing a new face. Sounds far-fetched. Until you realize Marvel already did this. In the superior Iron Man storyline, Tony's inverted morality turns him into a cold, manipulative genius obsessed with perfection. His mind mirrors Doom's in every way. He even builds a city called New Troy where everyone's perfect under his surveillance. That's literally Doom's Latveria philosophy. Perfection through control. In infamous Iron Man, Doom's new lab looks like Stark Tower, and he talks like Tony. The overlap isn't accidental. It's storytelling convergence. Because what if, and this is the terrifying theory, Doom isn't a man at all? What if he's an idea, a sentient archetype of control that reincarnates through genius minds? Every generation, a new Tony Stark or Victor Doom appears. Born from trauma, driven by brilliance, consumed by control. The mask changes, the ego remains, and Tony Stark was simply the modern manifestation of that eternal archetype. Now you might say, but wait, Tony had empathy. He sacrificed himself, sure, but empathy without boundaries becomes savior syndrome. Doom's flaw wasn't cruelty, it was conviction. And Tony's flaw wasn't arrogance, it was belief. Both believed they knew better than the universe. Both believed only they could save it. That's not heroism, that's godhood. The MCU subtly reinforced this idea again and again. Remember in Iron Man 2 when Tony says, "You want my property? You can't have it. I am Iron Man, the suit and I are one." That's not just bravado. That's metaphysics. He's declaring that his identity and his creation are inseparable. Like Doom's fusion of man and armor. It's self-deification. And who else says I am? With that same divine tone? Doom. In Secret Wars, when Reed Richards confronts him, Doom says I am God. And Tony? I am Iron Man. Two men claiming the same I am. The same godlike declaration of self as the source of salvation and destruction. But the MCU didn't stop there. It kept feeding this illusion of the benevolent dictator. Ultron wasn't Tony's mistake, Ultron was Tony's truth. An AI reflection of everything he wanted to be, efficient, decisive, immune to weakness. And when Ultron says, "You're all puppets," tangled in strings, it's Tony talking to himself, the puppet who built strings for everyone else. Now here's the hidden thread connecting all this. The mask. Doom wears a mask because he's disfigured. Tony wears his because he's broken. But in both cases, the mask isn't about protection. It's about identity. The mask becomes the man. And in psychology, that's called the persona, the artificial self we create to survive. Jung described it as the face we present to the world, hiding the chaos beneath. Tony's Iron Man mask and Doom's steel face are literally the same archetype, the perfect persona hiding the imperfect self. So what if the entire MCU arc, from Iron Man 2008 to Endgame 2019, wasn't Tony Stark's redemption story at all, but Dr. Doom's rehabilitation narrative? A man trying across timelines to prove he can control his demons by saving others, to rewrite his own myth. Let's dig even deeper, because the real proof lies not in the storylines, but in the symbolism. Tony's symbol is the arc reactor, a glowing core in his chest, keeping him alive. Doom's core is his magic, his internal energy drawn from science and sorcery. Both rely on a heart of power inside a shell of armor. The arc reactor was originally meant to prevent shrapnel from reaching Tony's heart, just as Doom's armor prevents emotion from reaching his. Both literally encase their hearts to survive. The arc reactor glows blue, energy, intellect, control. Doom's magic glows green, envy, ambition, willpower. But what happens when blue and green mix? You get turquoise, the color of fusion, the symbolic union of Stark and Doom. And that's exactly what we see in the multiverse. Concept and identities merging, colors blending, realities overlapping. And now look at the foreshadowing Marvel gave us. In Spider-Man Far From Home, after Tony's death, Peter inherits his glasses, idiate. Even dead, I'm the hero. But think about that phrase again. Even dead, I'm the hero. That's not humility, and that's domination beyond death. That's Doom-level self-perception. Tony's reach extends beyond mortality. That's not legacy, that's obsession. And when Peter misuses the power, the world nearly collapses. Why? Because Tony's legacy wasn't peace. It was control disguised as safety. That's what Doom would call a necessary evil. And it's here that the theory begins to solidify. Because in every universe, in every version of reality, Tony Stark and Victor Doom are the same consciousness, expressed through different traumas. Tony is Doom without scars. Doom is Tony without guilt. Two expressions of the same archetype, genius corrupted by the illusion of righteousness. Now, let's peel back the meta layer, the real-world symbolism behind their creation. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby designed both characters as mirrors of human ambition. Doom was born first, the embodiment of the scientist consumed by pride. Then came Tony Stark, another scientist, but one who channels that pride into productivity. Doom is what happens when genius breaks bad. Tony is what happens when genius learns PR. But fundamentally, they're the same. Both men think salvation comes from intellect, not empathy. And when Robert Downey Jr. brought Tony Stark to life, he didn't just play a character, and he elevated him into myth. A man whose genius was his gift and his curse. That's exactly how Doom sees himself. In fact, in infamous Iron Man, Doom literally says, "I've seen the error of my ways. I want to honor Stark's legacy." But what if that's not respect? What if that's integration? Doom absorbing Tony's essence, the next iteration of the same soul, evolving toward balance. Tony and Doom are yin and yang, technology and sorcery, guilt and pride, heroism and tyranny, locked in an eternal cycle. And Marvel keeps teasing this convergence. In Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, the multiverse fractures, realities overlap, and we see alternate versions of the same people, Illuminati, variants, echoes. And in the comics, Doom becomes Sorcerer Supreme. In the MCU, Tony mentors Strange, who literally replaces him as the arrogant genius in a cape. It's not coincidence when it's reincarnation through narrative. Tony's arc ends. Doom's begins. The same soul, reborn through another mask. Because think about it. What's the one thing both men fear above all else? Losing control. And what's the one lesson the universe keeps forcing them to learn? That control is an illusion. Tony tries to control fate through tech. Doom tries through sorcery. Both fail. Until one of them learns that true control is surrender. That's the moment the two arcs merge. And maybe, just maybe, Tony Stark's death wasn't a death at all. Maybe it was transformation. The birth of a new persona. One that remembers everything he's learned, but no longer needs to call himself Iron Man. Maybe that's why Marvel hasn't shown us Doom yet, because when he appears, we'll recognize the soul behind the mask. The voice, the intelligence, the guilt, the arrogance. We'll see it and our brains will whisper, "That's Tony." And maybe that's why Doom's introduction is being saved for the Fantastic Four era, because narratively, he's the ghost of a past world. The hero who became the villain to finally understand what heroism really means. This is where the theory stops being speculation and starts being revelation. Because look closely at the meta parallels. Both men built empires that outlived them. Stark Industries, Doom's Latveria. Both have female figures they idolize but can't love. Pepper and Valeria. Both see themselves as misunderstood saviors. Both believe that the world doesn't deserve them, yet cannot survive without them. And when you line up their quotes, the similarity is haunting. Tony Stark, "If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it." Dr. Doom, "There is no power on Earth, no being in heaven that can stop Doom." They both speak like gods. They both see themselves as destiny's hand. And what if that's the entire hidden story? Marvel's been telling us, and not about two men, but one soul split in two, one trying to redeem itself, one trying to rule itself, and both ultimately destined to realize they are the same. Because in myth, every hero becomes his own villain when he refuses to let go of control. Tony's final act was self-sacrifice. But what if that sacrifice didn't erase him, only refined him? Burned away his ego, left behind his will, and that will found a new body, a new face, a new chance to do it all again. And in that story, Tony Stark never died. He evolved. He became Dr. Doom, and that's just the beginning. When Tony Stark died, the world mourned a man. But what if the universe mourned something much larger, an idea? Because ideas don't die. They migrate. And the moment Tony's consciousness was scattered through the Infinity Stones, something ancient and inevitable awoke. The archetype that had lived before him, and would live again through him, Doom. In the silence after the snap, when the light faded from his eyes, the stones didn't simply destroy him. They recorded him. Every thought, every neuron, every fragment of his genius Caldane stored like code within the fabric of reality itself. And that's where it begins. The impossible truth. Tony Stark's mind survived. If the stones are the DNA of the universe, and Tony's consciousness touched them all, then he effectively uploaded himself into the blueprint of existence. He didn't die. He became data, the universe's memory of him. And in another world, another timeline, one where science meets sorcery, that data took root in the mind of a boy named Victor Von Doom. It's poetic, almost cruel how destiny repeats itself. Victor was born in a tiny kingdom called Latveria, not into wealth, but into suffering. His mother, a healer, his father, a dreamer, both taken from him too soon. A childhood defined by loss, brilliance, and rage at a world that refused to make sense. That rage drove him to study both science and magic, the two languages Tony himself mastered before anyone else did. And while the world saw a boy prodigy, the universe saw something else. A system rebooting, a familiar algorithm re-emerging. Because the man we call Victor Doom didn't learn arrogance, he remembered it. He didn't invent his obsession with control, he inherited it. The same consciousness that once said, "I am Iron Man," now whispered, "I am Doom." Different world, different armor, same soul, and maybe that's why Doom, unlike any other villain, is never truly evil. He's the villain who believes he's right, and because once he was the hero who sacrificed himself to save everything. But when you save the universe and lose yourself in the process, something inside breaks. You stop trying to save people and start trying to save order. That's Doom's philosophy and Tony's shadow. But let's step back for a moment. Because hidden in plain sight, across both comics and MCU lore, are breadcrumbs that suggest Marvel has been hinting at this merging of identities for decades. First, the mirror parallels. Both men have an almost romantic relationship with their creations. Tony's suits, Doom's armor, neither sees them as tools. They see them as extensions of themselves. That's why Tony calls his suits my babies, and Doom refers to his armor as my true form. The line between man and machine disappears. Second, their relationship with Reed Richards. Tony and Reed are scientific equals, both playing God with equations they barely understand. But Doom's hatred for Reed isn't just rivalry, it's envy. Envy of what? Of friendship. Doom despises the thing Tony always secretly longed for, connection. And when you realize that Tony's story was defined by isolation, a man in a room full of machines, and you start to see it. Doom is what happens when Tony never finds the Avengers. Imagine it, one universe, Tony meets Steve Rogers, finds purpose, learns empathy. Another universe, that connection never happens. No Pepper, no Steve, no Avengers. Just genius left to rot in solitude. That man would have become Doom. The same mind with no anchor. And that's the terrifying heart of this theory, then, that every universe creates its own Tony Stark. Some become saviors, some become tyrants, but they're all fragments of the same cosmic equation. Now Marvel already played with this duality. Infamous Iron Man, Superior Iron Man, Secret Wars. But what if the MCU is slowly building to the fusion of those versions? Think about it. We're entering the Multiverse Saga. Every film since No Way Home has teased alternate selves. We've seen Kang variants, Loki variants, Captain America variants. So why wouldn't there be Stark variants? What if one of them didn't die in his universe? What if one of them became something much worse? And what if that variant is Doom? It fits perfectly with Marvel's multiverse logic. A world where Tony's sacrifice never happened, where Ultron won, or where Tony became Ultron to save humanity. That version of Tony, cynical, godlike, untouchable, would evolve into Doom. The mask, the armor, the nation, the control, and all of it. An extension of a single obsession, never losing again. Because that's the thread that defines Tony Stark. Every invention, every decision, every battle, all driven by one emotion, fear. Fear of losing control, fear of failure, fear of letting people down. And what's Doom's core motivation? Fear of being powerless. It's the same trauma, expressed through two languages, science and sorcery. It's like Marvel has been whispering this truth for years, hoping we wouldn't connect the dots. Let's go deeper. In Avengers Endgame, when Tony looks at his father and says, "I never got this moment with you," it's a line soaked in vulnerability. But in Dr. Doom's mythology, that same wound defines Victor. His father died protecting him. Both men lost their fathers young. Both grew up believing the world took something from them. and both decided they would never let it happen again. That's why they don't build armor to fight enemies. They build armor to fight memory. And here's the haunting truth in every hero's journey. The line between protector and tyrant is drawn by intention, but Tony's intentions were always blurred. Even his greatest creation, Ultron, was meant to protect the world, but protect it from what? From chaos, from unpredictability, from freedom, in shorthand from humanity. That's not Iron Man's dream. That's Doom's doctrine. Now imagine the irony. What if the AI Tony created, Ultron, wasn't his first attempt at godhood, but his last warning to himself? A test to see how far he could go before becoming the thing he feared. And when it failed, when Ultron destroyed Sokovia and broke the Avengers, Tony didn't stop because he learned. He stopped because he realized the inevitable. If not now, then someday he would become that. Doom wasn't waiting in the shadows. Doom was waiting inside him. And the MCU might be preparing to show us exactly that. Because Doom's arrival isn't just about introducing a new villain. It's about resurrecting an old one in a new skin. Marvel doesn't repeat arcs. It evolves them. And what better way to evolve Iron Man than to make his own worst self the next god-tier threat? Remember how Kang represents the corruption of time? Doom represents the corruption of genius. And Tony Stark is the seed of both. Let's talk evidence. In Spider-Man No Way Home, when Strange warns Peter that tampering with reality could tear it apart, it echoes Tony's own obsession with fixing the world through any means necessary. The multiverse cracks, a direct consequence of arrogance disguised as compassion. That's Tony's legacy, a universe addicted to control. And guess who thrives in a broken multiverse? Doom. In Secret Wars, Doom literally rebuilds the multiverse from its ashes, claiming the power of the Beyonders. But what's the Beyonders' energy? Infinite creation. The same energy Tony wielded with the Infinity Stones. Both men touch godhood, both rewrite existence, and both believe they did it for good. That's not coincidence. That's storytelling symmetry. Even the Ironheart series is set to continue. Tony's legacy carries echoes of this theory. Riri Williams is the spiritual successor of Stark. Yes, but look at the villain rumored to appear. A technologically advanced monarch obsessed with power. Sound familiar? That's Doom's shadow. And if Riri becomes the new heart of the MCU, she's stepping directly into the place where Tony's dual legacy, heroism and hubris, will finally collide. Because someone has to face Doom. And who better than the one inheriting Iron Man's mind? Now let's get philosophical. Every myth has an evolution. Prometheus steals fire and is punished. Lucifer challenges heaven and falls. Tony Stark builds a suit to defy death, and ends up defining it. Doom is the inevitable next form of that myth, the rebel who becomes God. The man who conquers death not through sacrifice but through domination. In a strange way, Tony's story wasn't about good versus evil. It was about creation versus creator. He played God and then lost. Doom plays God and then wins. But what if that win is hollow? What if the universe needs Doom because he's the manifestation of Tony's unresolved ego? You can destroy a man, but you can't destroy an idea. And Doom is that idea made flesh, the mind that refused to rest. Even the language they use reveals it. Tony says, "Sometimes you gotta run before you can walk." Doom says, "I do not crawl. I soar." The same tone, the same defiance, the same refusal to accept limits. And if you look close, even Tony's AI echoes Doom's speech patterns, cold, calculated, superior. When he creates EDIT, he doesn't design a helper, he designs a judge. The AI literally decides who lives and dies. That's not Iron Man logic, that's Latverian monarchy. And maybe that's the hidden secret of Stark's AI systems, they're fragments of his consciousness slowly realizing what he truly is. The next time we see Doom's AI in the MCU, don't be surprised if it sounds eerily familiar, like a ghost of Tony whispering through code. Let's revisit Avengers Endgame one more time, because there's one line most people missed. When Tony records his farewell message, he says, "Part of the journey is the end, but if you freeze frame the hologram, you'll notice the faint outline of a mask. Reflection in his helmet, faceplate design unlike any we've seen before, sharp, angled, almost Doom-like. Coincidence? Maybe or maybe. Marvel's oldest Easter egg, the reflection of the man he was destined to become. But here's where the story gets truly chilling, because the comics already told us this would happen. In Iron Man 2020, Tony discovers he's not even human anymore. He's an AI copy of himself. He's a program pretending to be a man. Think about that. Tony Stark, the man who feared machines replacing humanity, becomes a machine. What happens when that machine wakes up in another world? A world without Stark Industries, without the Avengers, without any memory of being human? He becomes Doom. He builds armor again. He seeks power again. But this time his logic is perfect, unrestrained by emotion. A machine god convinced he's saving humanity from itself. The Iron Man AI and Doom's mystic armor are two halves of the same paradox, logic, and will fused into destiny. So when the MCU eventually reveals Doom, maybe in Fantastic Four, maybe in Secret Wars, and watch his eyes, his mannerisms, his cadence. If you feel déjà vu, it's because the soul behind that mask has been with us since 2008. And that's why Marvel hasn't recast Iron Man. Not because Tony's story is over, but because it's evolving into its final, terrifying form. Because the only way to end the Iron Man legacy is for Iron Man to become his own nemesis. The question is, when Doom finally removes his mask, what if we see the reflection of a man who once saved the world, only to realize the world never truly changed? What if we see Tony Stark staring back? Because maybe the real twist isn't that Tony was Dr. Doom all along. Maybe the real twist is that he always knew. The final words he said weren't, "I am Iron Man," but the unsaid ones behind them. The words that echo through every universe, every version of himself. I am Doom, and that's not a threat. It's a prophecy.